November 20th, 1947. Westminster Abbey awaits. The world holds its breath for a royal wedding that will restore hope to a war-weary Britain. But in the private chambers of Buckingham Palace, disaster strikes with a sharp, sickening crack. The antique metal frame of Queen Mary's Fringe Tiara, Princess Elizabeth's something borrowed, has snapped in two just hours before she's meant to walk down the aisle. "I thought I'd broken it," the future queen would recall decades later, her voice still carrying the echo of that morning's alarm. Panic ripples through the palace. This isn't just any tiara. It's a piece woven from the very fabric of royal history, crafted from diamonds that once graced Queen Victoria's wedding gift to Queen Mary in 1893. It carries the weight of 3 generations, the hopes of a nation, and now it lies broken in a young bride's trembling hands. But this story isn't really about a tiara that broke. It's about the quiet guardians who have stood behind the crown for nearly 3 centuries, not just mending metal and stone, but preserving the very soul of royal memory. The House of Garrard didn't just save a wedding that day, they saved a legacy. For 280 years, through revolution and war, through love and loss, Garrard has been the silent keeper of royal emotions made manifest in diamonds and gold. They are the craftsmen who transform grief into dignity, love into legacy, and hope into heirlooms that outlive the queens who wear them. Today, we unlock the vault of these untold stories, where every repair tells a tale of resilience, every commission captures a moment of the heart, and every jewel becomes a witness to history itself. The tiara that almost missed the wedding. The morning light filtering through the palace windows should have been golden with promise. Instead, it illuminated a scene of quiet crisis. Princess Elizabeth, just 21 years old, stood frozen as her hairdresser stared in horror at the broken tiara in her hands. The fringe tiara had seemed invincible, a cascade of diamond spikes that had adorned Queen Mary's head with regal authority for decades. Created by Garrard in 1919, it was born from the diamonds of a necklace Queen Victoria had given to Mary as a wedding present. It was meant to be unbreakable, eternal, a symbol of continuity itself. But symbols, like hearts, can fracture under pressure. "We have 2 hours and there are other tiaras," the Queen Mother said with characteristic pragmatism. But Elizabeth was adamant. This tiara, this particular piece of family history, was the one she would wear. It wasn't just about tradition, it was about connection. In wearing her grandmother's tiara, she was wrapping herself in the love and strength of the women who came before her. The palace machinery swung into motion with military precision. A police escort was hastily arranged, sirens wailing through London's morning traffic as they rushed the broken diadem to Garrard's workshop on Regent Street. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The very jewelers who had created this masterpiece nearly 30 years earlier were now being called upon to resurrect it. In the workshop, master craftsmen worked with hands that had learned their trade through generations of service to the crown. They understood that they weren't just soldering metal. They were mending a moment that would be photographed, filmed, and remembered for centuries. The repair was completed with minutes to spare. The tiara was rushed back to the palace, where it was carefully secured to Elizabeth's veil. If you look closely at the official wedding photographs, you can still see the evidence of that morning's drama, a small, uneven gap between the central spike and the one to its right. It's a permanent reminder that even the most perfect moments are built on human fragility and determination. The story of the fringe tiara didn't end with that wedding day. It became a bridge between generations, worn by Princess Anne in 1973 and Princess Beatrice in 2020. Each time it graced a royal bride's head, it carried with it the memory of that November morning when love and craftsmanship triumphed over disaster. The tiara that almost missed the wedding became the tiara that defined royal resilience, a testament to the truth that the most precious things in life are often the most fragile and the most worth fighting to preserve. Garrard's legacy through royal love and loss. Love made manifest. On the eve of her wedding in 1840, the young Queen Victoria received a gift that would become one of the most treasured pieces in the entire royal collection. Prince Albert presented her with a magnificent sapphire and diamond cluster brooch, its deep blue center surrounded by 12 sparkling diamonds like stars around a midnight sky. A splendid and lovely brooch of an immense sapphire set round with diamonds. "It is quite beautiful," Victoria wrote in her journal, her usual reserve melting away in the face of such thoughtful affection. The next day, she pinned it to her wedding gown as her something blue, a private symbol of love worn for all the world to see. This wasn't just a wedding gift, it was a promise made tangible. Albert had worked closely with Garrard to create something that would capture not just Victoria's eye, but her heart. The brooch became her most personal treasure, a piece of her angel that she could carry with her always. The true measure of its significance came in Victoria's will, where she designated it an heirloom of the crown, ensuring it would pass from monarch to monarch. Generations later, Queen Elizabeth II would make this brooch one of her most frequently worn pieces, understanding instinctively that she was carrying forward not just a jewel, but a love story. The crown born from grief. In the shadow of Windsor Castle, in the depths of a grief so profound it seemed to stop time itself, Queen Victoria made a request that would define the remainder of her reign. Prince Albert was gone, taken by typhoid in 1861, and with him had died the light in Victoria's world. She retreated into mourning dress, into seclusion, into a darkness that seemed impenetrable. But duty eventually called her back to public life. And when it did, she needed a crown that could honor both her role as sovereign and her identity as a widow. She turned to Garrard with a request that was as practical as it was poignant. Create a crown that could be worn over her widow's veil. The result was a masterpiece of miniature majesty. The small diamond crown, barely a few inches in diameter, encrusted entirely in white diamonds. No colored stones, no ostentation, just pure, brilliant light that could pierce through the darkness of mourning. When Victoria appeared at the state opening of Parliament in 1871, wearing this delicate diadem atop her black lace cap, she created an image that would define her for the rest of her reign. The crown became a symbol of how grief could be transformed into quiet dignity, how loss could become a different kind of power. Garrard had done more than create a piece of jewelry. They had crafted a visual language for resilience itself. The diamonds that carried memory. Among all the treasures in the royal collection, few pieces carry as much quiet significance as the Cullinan 3 and 4 brooch, two spectacular diamonds that Queen Mary affectionately called Granny's chips. When Queen Elizabeth II inherited the brooch in 1953, she understood that its true value lay not in its size, but in its story. In 1958, during a state visit to the Netherlands, she made a gesture that revealed the depth of her character. She wore the brooch to visit the Ascher Diamond Works in Amsterdam, the very place where the original Cullinan diamond had been cut 50 years earlier. There, she met elderly Louis Ascher, brother of the man who had performed the historic cutting. Nearly blind by then, he could barely see the diamonds that had once been his family's greatest achievement. In a moment of spontaneous kindness, the Queen unpinned the brooch and placed it in his hands, allowing him to feel once more the stones he had helped bring to life. The old man wept. Here was a monarch who understood that jewels were not just possessions, but connections, to craftsmen, to history, to the human stories that gave them meaning. the tiara of protection and power. In 1973, Queen Elizabeth II faced a gap in her collection that was both practical and symbolic. She needed a ruby tiara, but more than that, she needed a piece that would tell her own story, separate from the inherited treasures of her predecessors. The solution was characteristically thoughtful. Rather than commission entirely new stones, the Queen chose to repurpose gifts that already held deep meaning. The 96 rubies came from the people of Burma, presented as a wedding gift in 1947, with the belief that they would protect the wearer from the 96 diseases that could afflict the human body. The diamonds came from a dismantled tiara, another wedding present from the Nizam of Hyderabad. Garrard took these elements and created something entirely new: the Burmese Ruby Tiara, designed as a wreath of roses with ruby centers and diamond petals. It was modern yet timeless, personal yet regal. The Queen was literally crowning herself with the good wishes of her people and the memories of her youth. When she wore the tiara in her later years, it became a splash of vibrant color in a collection dominated by white diamonds. Perhaps she took quiet comfort in the folklore surrounding those 96 Burmese rubies, each one a guardian against misfortune, a tangible reminder that she was protected by the love of her people. More than jewels, a silent guardian of the crown. In the quiet corridors of power, where history is made in whispered conversations and momentous decisions, there has always been a constant presence. For nearly 3 centuries, the House of Garrard has stood as the silent guardian of the crown's most precious memories, the keeper of secrets held in gold and diamonds. While prime ministers rose and fell, while empires expanded and contracted, while the very nature of monarchy evolved with the times, Garrard remained. They were the constant thread weaving through the tapestry of royal history, their workshops a sanctuary where the past was preserved and the future was crafted with infinite care. Consider the scope of their stewardship. Every coronation crown polished to perfection, every state tiara adjusted for its wearer, every precious brooch cleaned and reset when stones worked loose from their settings. They were the ones who ensured that when a queen reached for her jewels, they would be ready, not just beautiful, but meaningful. Their role extended far beyond mere maintenance. When Queen Mary decided to modernize an old tiara, it was Garrard who understood her vision and brought it to life. When Princess Elizabeth needed a wedding tiara repaired in mere hours, it was Garrard who rose to the challenge. When Queen Elizabeth II wanted to create something new from treasured gifts, it was Garrard who wove together the threads of meaning into a crown worthy of her reign. They were the keepers of royal secrets, not the political kind, but the personal ones. They knew which pieces held special meaning for each queen, which jewels were worn for comfort in times of stress, which tiaras were chosen for their symbolic power rather than their beauty. They understood that a sapphire brooch could carry a love story across generations, that a small diamond crown could transform grief into dignity, that a ruby tiara could embody the hopes of an entire people. The relationship between Garrard and the crown was built on more than commercial transaction. It was founded on trust. Trust that the jewelers would understand not just the technical requirements of their craft, but the emotional significance of their work. Trust that they would preserve not just the physical integrity of the pieces, but their spiritual essence as well. Where the crown changed hands, Garrard held the history. They were the bridge between eras, the constant that allowed each new monarch to connect with their predecessors through the jewels they wore. When Queen Elizabeth II put on Queen Victoria's sapphire brooch, she was not just wearing a piece of jewelry. She was wrapping herself in a love story that Garrard had helped preserve for over a century. We return now to that November morning in 1947, to the sound of breaking metal and the sight of scattered diamonds, to a young princess standing in her wedding dress with tears threatening to spill. But now we see it differently, don't we? This was never just the story of a tiara that broke. It was the story of a love that endured. Queen Mary's love for her granddaughter, expressed in the gift of a family heirloom. It was the story of duty fulfilled, craftsmen working against impossible odds to preserve a moment of joy. It was the story of resilience rewarded, a broken tiara becoming a symbol of strength rather than fragility. In that frantic morning, in those precious hours when time seemed to stand still, Garrard did what they had always done. They held the pieces together. Not just the metal and diamonds of a broken tiara, but the threads of continuity that bind one generation to the next, one queen to another, one moment of history to all the moments that would follow. The scar is still there, visible in the wedding photographs if you know where to look. That small gap between the diamond spikes serves as a reminder that even the most perfect moments are built on human effort, on the determination to mend what is broken, to preserve what matters, to ensure that love endures even when everything else seems to fall apart. For nearly 3 centuries, through wars and peace, through triumph and tragedy, through the changing tides of history itself, Garrard has been there. Not in the spotlight, not seeking glory, but quietly, steadily, faithfully preserving the moments that matter most. They weren't just repairing diamonds that November morning. They were preserving memories the world would never forget. And in every sparkle of every jewel they've ever touched, in every crown they've ever crafted, in every broken piece they've ever mended, lies the same truth, that love, when held in the right hands, truly is eternal. The tiara may have broken, but the story it tells, of love, of legacy, of the quiet heroes who preserve our most precious moments, that story will shine forever. Which of these jewels moved you the most? The tiara that broke, the crown of grief, or the love in a sapphire brooch? Let us know in the comments which royal jewel you'd protect if you could. Subscribe to join our community of royal history lovers and never miss a tale of elegance, resilience, and the treasures time tried to forget.